The beauty of the countryside is breathtaking. And I think if you stay only in Montevideo or only go to the beaches, you're missing a lot. I haven't been up to the north like you were telling me about yet. I
Yeah.
will definitely, but I think the countryside is really lovely. And even the beaches up, I guess that's super far east or north, like Rocha, those beaches, like if you go far, are stunning. They're just amazing. But I think the beauty of the countryside is amazing. Um, a few other things that surprised me in a really pleasant way is it is very, I don't know how, it's it's like Uruguay is more closely aligned with European countries than it is with the US. And that has been a real, and I mean in like both in architecture and in mindset to some degree.
All right. Okay. So I'm here with Keitsa. Keitsa, tell me, where are you from and why did you move to Uruguay?
I'm originally from the United States. I moved to Uruguay for work. However, there were many choices available, and I really researched it, and Uruguay won out
All right. So tell me, when was that?
2 years ago, July of 23.
Okay. So you said that you chose Uruguay. Tell me a bit more about that. What do you do here?
So I am an educator. I work in international education. So I've been a lot of places at this point around the world. And so, yeah, I moved here for work with education. And uh, Uruguay was a great choice for me in my research because looking at it, I really wanted to get back to Latin America. I really love Latin America. I thought I would be, I'm originally from the US. I thought I would be closer to home. I can read a map, but it wasn't clear. Um, but I researched it knowing that it's a very stable country, progressive, forward-thinking country, and a country that really offers a high standard of living within Latin America is extremely appealing. And I've found that to all be true.
All right. So, you came with your wife, and I wanted to ask you, how has it been as a same-sex couple here?
It's been wonderful. It's been we moved here from Vienna, Austria, which was also an excellent experience in that aspect. Here, I we have never once felt uncomfortable. No, we've only been here 2 years. But in that time, we've not felt uncomfortable. We feel very comfortable holding hands on the street, etc. At work, no problems at all. And I work with kids and their parents. I've never had a situation where I felt like we were going to be discriminated against or even be made to feel uncomfortable. And the as far as the systems in place and the legality side of it, not just the social side, it's just as if you're coming with a heterosexual couple. Everything is very equal, and so that so far my experience has proven to be true in that that type of forward thinking is ingrained in the culture here.
Okay, cool. Now, your partner's from Costa Rica, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you arrived, you came with a job.
Yes,
Okay. Actually, let's talk about that first because you work in the English speaking sector, right?
correct. Yes.
In a bilingual school.
No, I'm in an English immersion school, so a completely international school. It's English immersion.
All right. Okay. So a lot of people contact me and they assume that they can come to Uruguay because they're a native English speaker and they can get a job teaching English. And I was wondering what advice you'd have to people like that.
Um, I mean, I'm sure it's technically possible, but I think it would be quite challenging. First of all, if you want to work in a school, you need to have teacher qualifications. All the schools in Uruguay require true teacher qualifications. And if they recruit internationally, you need to come ahead of time with your job. If they're looking for excuse me, English speakers, they generally tend to go with Uruguayans who speak English. It's not so easy to get a job in a school. If you're looking to teach English in, say, English institutes, which there are some here, again, that would be technically possible. There are a few here. However, they tend to hire mainly Uruguayans who speak English. Um, There are a lot of Uruguayans who have been educated or worked outside of Uruguay in native English speaking countries. And so we have a really big pool to choose from for local hires. So it's a challenge to come without a job.
For sure. And also, like, just if we just think of the economies of scale, right? We're in a country of just 3 million people.
Yes,
So
that's
the
right.
opportunities that there are limited
Very,
in
very,
any of the fields. And
exactly.
as you mentioned, like 1 in 10 Uruguayans has actually often grown up abroad or lived abroad. So,
Exactly, exactly. And just for clarity, myself nor the person who was in my position before me or colleagues at other schools that I know, none of us have hired a person who has moved here from abroad once they're here. It's not a common practice.
okay. So people that work at institutions like yours, like immersion schools, or which is unusual, right? I think is yours one of the
We're the only
only
one in the
ones?
country. Yeah. They're
Okay. And the rest bilingual schools then in that case. And
right.
so um they are hiring people that are before they arrive in Uruguay.
Exactly. Or again, local Uruguayans, which is much more common because, like you said, the pool is small and most Uruguayans, well, in that sector, have been abroad and they speak very good English.
Yeah, and Uruguay is a highly educated country.
Exactly.
150 years of free education, so and compulsory education. So yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. All right, cool. Um, Before we leave this topic of jobs, you kindly shared with me that your partner, who is a native Spanish speaker and also speaks perfect English,
Correct.
moved with you, and she's had a problem, a struggle finding employment.
That's correct. She had in Costa Rica, she worked at an international English speaking school for over 20 years. So her English is perfect and she's a native Spanish speaker. And we just thought that she'd be able to find a job here at one of the local bilingual schools. Um, it is at 2 years of searching. Now, granted, she's only looked in the sector of education, but she has not been able to get a job. It's just, again, it's just not a practice that's common. She's gone to different schools, and being truly bilingual, fluent in both languages,
Yeah.
one would think it would be fair and an experienced educator with all the qualifications. One would think it would not be so hard, but it's she has not found a job yet.
Right. So the reality is other. Yeah, you'd think she would have been snapped up.
Exactly.
Mm. All right. Okay. So let's talk about something that's more fun. So, um, you're an educator. You have quite a high level of responsibility in the place that you work. So you're pretty busy with that. So when I asked you to share your average week, you said maybe it would be better to share my average weekend.
Yes.
All right. I would love to hear, what does your typical weekend look like? And like, what would you do? What would you eat? What would you spend?
So I really enjoy the weekends here in Uruguay and even weeknights. After I told you that, I thought about it. But I really enjoy the weekends here. I don't bring work home, which is very nice. The work-life balance is solid, which I appreciate. Um,
That's a cultural thing, you would say?
I think it's a cultural thing. Yeah, I mean, it's my local staff. They leave when school is over and they do a little bit of outside, but tend to not work so much outside, which I think is wonderful. I respect a good work-life balance. And I do see that here a lot.
Mm.
So typical weekend, I usually go for a walk. I'll take my dogs out and we go walk along La Rambla or around the neighborhood. Spend a lot of time outdoors. There's always something to do outdoors, even if it's just taking your beach chairs and sitting in a park, with a coffee or a mate. But there's a lot to do outdoors. Last weekend there was a food truck festival. There are often festivals outside, so we spend a lot of time at stuff like that. Um, I love hiking. That hasn't isn't so much here, but I do a lot.
Unfortunately not.
Right. There's just not
There's
that.
beach walking. All of the beaches are open, but the territory, the land here is in private hands, right? Very little hiking,
Yes,
unfortunately, unless you go with an organized group.
exactly. And
Mm.
it's very flat. Yeah.
You need to go north of you need to go a bit north, and then there are
Okay.
areas that are that are not mountainous, but definitely hilly. You need to
Okay.
check out Lavacheja, beautiful hills that remind my mum of Greece.
Ah,
And
okay.
just like over an hour and a half from where you live.
Mhm. Good to
Yeah,
know. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. And also going north, like there's a river, the Rio Negro, that kind of splits Uruguay in two. Once you go north of that, it's just a totally different countryside.
Okay. I need
Yeah, I mean, I was
more.
like, but
Thank
hang
you.
on, I heard that it was a gently rolling plain here, like all over Uruguay. And I'm like, evidently the people that wrote those Uruguayan textbooks that I looked at didn't come north of the Rio Negro, which is what a lot of people north of the Rio Negro tell me.
Ah, interesting. Okay, that's good to
Yeah,
know. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. We'll put some links down below for people to check it out, and I'll send them to you as well.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, we do a lot of time on the beach. A lot of time on the beach. The beach here is beautiful. It's got very white sand. It's got big sand dunes with trees all in it, and the beach flowers in the sand dunes. So the beach is gorgeous. I love the beach here. I grew up on the beach, so it's beautiful.
And how far do you live from the beach? Because you live near the airport, right?
Yes, I live towards the airport. Yeah, I'm an 8-minute drive to the beach.
Amazing. And Uruguayans don't appreciate often those beautiful beaches.
It's I agree. And now if I go a little bit further east, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, I get to even nicer beaches where
Atlantida and that kind of thing.
yes, and
Okay.
where they're empty. So my dogs can just run and be off leash and I don't have to pay attention. I can play, which is often what we do. So we spend a lot of time, walking on La Rambla, walking around the neighborhood, going to Parque Roosevelt even with the dogs, which is a nice, huge park. It's great for dog walks. A lot of time on the beach. And like I said, there's always stuff to do outdoors. Um, there, I'm finding that I think my friends are telling me it's new, but Montevideo is really starting to get a little bit more of a cafe scene. I even see it some since I've gotten here in just 2 years. And so there's always somewhere to go where you can have brunch, which is lovely, so we do a lot of that. Um, yeah, dinner with friends, always there's always plenty of social activities, which is really nice.
Hey, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Karen, and I've been running Uruguay, which is an independent guide to life and travel in Uruguay since 2013. This video is possible thanks to the support of Uruguay relocation specialist Sierra Atlantica. We've been recommending them since 2023. You can read our recommendation by clicking on the button above. If you're serious about moving to Uruguay, then they are offering a free consultation to Uruguay readers. You can write to them at hola@sa.uy or check out their website, sa.uy. Now let's get back to the interview. I do want to ask you about making friends, but before we move on to that, can you give me an idea of like what the cost of living is for you for
Yeah,
like this kind of typical weekend thing? I mean, obviously a lot of what you're saying doesn't even involve money.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I will say the cost of living here, if you're coming from, say, another Latin American country, it's definitely high. So if you're expecting it to be similar to, I don't know, somewhere else in South America or Central America, it's definitely very high. But if you're coming from Europe or the States, I find it to be quite similar. Um, going out to dinner can be very expensive. Um, but other than that, I'm not shocked by the prices. Where I heard before I moved here that the prices were extremely high. Um, Now, to be fair, my wife does the grocery shopping, so I don't know, about that. But I usually pay the bills when we go out to dinner, and I do think going out to eat is pretty expensive here. Um, Rent, I find my rent comparable to that it was in Austria. Um, However, I probably have more space for the money that I had in Austria.
Mhm.
Um, but there are always pros and cons, right? Like, so
Now, did you live in an expensive city in Austria?
I lived in Vienna.
Okay, so when you're saying it's comparable, then we are saying that you're living in like the area that you live near the airport. And we've done another video about this
Uh,
in Carrasco. You're in
okay, Miramar.
Parque Miramar, which is a bit closer to the airport even.
Yeah.
And we have addressed this, that it's kind of like one of the most expensive areas in Montevideo, right?
Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But still, I think that often people, as you said, expect it to be cheaper. And you're saying that it's comparative. You're not saying it's more expensive or cheaper. You're saying it's comparative to being in Vienna, but you're getting more space for your money in the case of rent, for example.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. For instance, here I have like, now it's tiny, but I have a little pool where in Vienna I would never have that, and I have outdoor space here, which I definitely didn't have in Vienna. But it is pricey. I mean, I lived in Costa Rica for several years and it's easily double the price of Costa Rica. And Costa Rica's an expensive country for Central America, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm,
Yeah.
okay,
So it's
great.
not cheap.
For sure, as many Uruguayans lament.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you came and you started working in a English speaking school. Um so I guess there's a friend pool there automatically.
Yes. Yes.
Um outside of that friend pool, is it easy to make friends for you?
So I was thinking about this. We were very fortunate in that we moved into a house rather than and sometimes that can be limiting, right? Because if you're in an apartment building, you can kind of make friends easier that way, or in a complex. But we wanted a house with a garden for the dogs. Um, so I was concerned about that, about making friends. But we got really lucky, and our next door neighbor, it happens to be just lovely, and he's become one of our best friends. We do stuff with him all the time. I've also met other people from other schools and other expats in other ways. So my next door neighbor is local. He's Uruguayan. And I've met many friends through him, which has been great. So because I had that one contact, I was able to easily expand a friend network. Um, I've also met a lot of other expats through work, not only at my school, but networking, which I've become friends with. But as far as meeting Uruguayans, I'm not sure if I came with my partner and hadn't had this one local contact, I don't know if it would have been as easy.
Mm.
But because I've got this local contact, it's been very easy. Now, if I were single, I think it'd be different because I'd be out more. I'd probably much easier make friends. But, you know, being not in my 20s, and not out as much, I think it would be challenging if I didn't have this one contact.
For sure, for sure. And you said that you've made other foreigner friends through networking.
Yes,
Tell me a
through
bit about that.
So I've contacted other people in the same position at me at other schools and professionally, and then it's just slowly led to friendships. So that way, I met one of the other a colleague at a different school one day. I said, let's have coffee, let's compare notes, let's talk about, our schools and how we do this and that. And it was meant to be a professional relationship, which it is, and it's been wonderful, but it's led to a friendship that has then opened other doors. Like he'll know someone and I'll know someone, and so the group expands.
That's very cool. I know that other we did a video with a guy that was here as a digital nomad, Chris. We'll put the link on the screen. Well, Chris talked about how easy it was, for example, reaching out to you know, fellow professionals in the field through LinkedIn, and how in Uruguay, like people would actually like get back to you and say, let's go for coffee.
Yeah.
And that it had very rarely happened to him in his travels around the world.
Yes, I will second that. That's exactly what happened with me. And I've not had that experience before.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I've
that's
had to know them in some way. I've had to meet them some way professionally first before that would happen. And this way
I
you just reach out and people are, yes, let's talk.
I guess that's one of the facts of being when you're a foreigner here. I guess you're still a bit of a novelty in a country of 3 million people.
That's true.
They're not tired of us yet.
That's right.
All right. So moving on to healthcare, because a lot of people like want to know about that.
Mhm.
Um, what have you had the experience of using healthcare?
I have. I've only needed it for, your annual checkups, et cetera. But the system has been fantastic. Um, Now, Having said that, I use the private system because the insurance through my employer is with the private system. But I found the care to be excellent, and the timeliness to be excellent. My wife is currently having a health situation, like her niece, where she's needing a lot of specialists, and everything she's received so far has been, I think, really good quality. The people have been kind. They take their time. They really sit with you and talk with you. It's not you're rushed in and rushed out like a number. They really sit with you and talk to you and try to understand the situation, and look for the best path forward. She did have to wait some for, say, physical therapy, just because, like 3 weeks, but just because it was so backed up. Um, but aside from that, that's the only wait we've ever had. Usually I can get a doctor's appointment for the next day or within the same week. And like I said, I find the care to be really high quality. The
Mm-hmm.
doctors take their time, you know. So it's
Um, yeah, I'm actually in the mid-level system. And that's one thing that always impresses me. Whereas in the UK, in the UK, you literally have 10 minutes with your doctor before you have to be out again. There's never a feeling when I go and see my doctor. And also conversely, and I don't understand how it works, there's never a big wait at the line. Whereas in the UK, I remember waiting hours for my appointment often.
exactly this same and same from the US. I mean, you go in and you're just like, I don't know, but you have no time with your doctor. And here they'll have a whole conversation. It's really a nice experience.
Mm.
You
Well, I
know.
guess again, here we are talking about the size of the country and the population. That's one of the things that works in our favor in that case.
Yes. Yes.
All right, cool. Now, you did mention that you arrived with pets.
Ah, yes.
And so quite a few people, of course, who are looking at moving to Uruguay, they also have pets. How
Mhm.
did you do it? How was the process?
So I have 3 dogs and 2 cats. Now my
Oh,
dogs are small. I know, I have quite a few.
oh, but they're small.
They're small. My dogs are small. 2 of them are smaller than the cats. Um, so we were coming from Europe. I've moved to many countries at this point, with pets, to every country. And if you've ever done it, it can be from a challenging to extremely challenging and frustrating to nearly impossible process. It can be very hard. Uruguay is by far the simplest process I've been through with my pets. The biggest trick was the airline. For me, I was coming from Europe and we had 5 pets, which is more than one per person. And so I had to find an airline that would allow you to have more than one per person. That was the biggest hardship, which has nothing to do with getting them into Uruguay. It only has to do with me having a zoo. You know? But the process is very simple. It's simply you make sure your animal's up to date on their shots. I'm pretty sure they needed to be microchipped. And within 30 days before your arrival in the country, you go to your vet, you have them fill out a health certificate, and you bring that with you. Along with their vaccine records. And it was extremely simple. When we actually arrived, they gave it a cursory glance and said, "Welcome to Uruguay." Yeah, it was amazing. It was a really, really easy process. It was much easier getting my pets here than it was getting my belongings here.
Oh, wow. Well, that will reassure a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very easy process.
And um, do you recall the airline?
We ended up having to fly through Buenos Aires. So we flew, because Iberia out of Spain won't fly with the pets. I can't remember who we ended up flying with, but we had to fly through Buenos Aires and then take the buque bus.
And take the ferry across.
Yeah,
Okay,
that is the hardest part.
and how did the animals come then?
So 2 rode in the cabin with us, and then 3 rode under the plane. We were allowed to have one each with us, and then the other 3 under. In the bouquet bus, in the ferry, we rented a car, and we put them all in the car, and they stayed in the car while we were up on the ferry, and they were fine. I wasn't worried at all. It was very safe.
Oh, that's amazing. My understanding is that you can't take a hire car from one country to the other.
You can, but you have to have like a special note from the car rental, which we had arranged in advance, just to have a special little note, and it was easy.
And
It
so,
ended up being easy.
and so you used an international car company then that would allow you to drop off the car in Montevideo?
No, we had to take it back. That
Ah.
is the catch, is you have to take it back to Argentina.
Well, but that's not bad though. I mean, it's still, we're talking about, right?
A few hours. And then when we arrived here, we were exhausted, of course, from flying. And we brought the car and we kept it here a few days. And then we took it back to Argentina and spent a few days in Argentina. So it was perfect.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know that a lot of people have heard all sorts of things about, and they say to me like that they would never dream of putting their pets in the hold of the airplane. Now, I brought my cat down from Washington, D.C. when I moved here 25 years ago.
Wow.
And our cat literally just kind of like strolled out of his little cat carrier
Yes.
into the garden of the place that we were renting. And just, it was like he'd lived there all his life.
Same. My pets, and I was the same when I left, because when I left Costa Rica to move to Austria, I also had to take all my pets. And then again here. And I had never put an animal in the hold below. And I was one of those people that said, I will never do that. But then I had no choice unless I was going to fly 5 family members with me, you know? So it was one dog and 2 cats that went under. And in both instances, they came out like nothing had happened. Like they had gone and taken a nice nap. Now I did check with the airlines in both instances to be sure that they had, a nice hold, that it was one that was climatized. It was, separate enough from the luggage, because you hear crazy stories. And they, like, one even offered to send me a video of what it looked like.
You're not the first person who's told me about that. About like literally like having their pet that somebody offers to video their pets for them as they're going.
It was
I,
really.
I, I think we want the name of this company. So maybe if you have I mean, might you have a way of looking it up and we'll pop the name of the company in
I'll try, well, I
the show
just flew
notes?
just with the airline. I didn't use a pet relocation company.
Yeah. No, I mean the airline though, because
I
you
will.
said you checked up a there were other ones that wouldn't allow you, right, to fly
Yeah,
direct.
I
Yeah.
will find out. I will find out. Yeah.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. All right. Okay, so just last couple of questions. We've been talking about all the things that are really nice, and about Uruguay. Of course, no country is perfect. So, would you be happy to share one or two things that frustrate you or that you
Yeah,
wish were different?
absolutely. I think my biggest frustration, now this is one of those things that if this is your biggest frustration, you're doing okay. I think my biggest frustration here is the driving. And the driving here, it's not crazy fast. It's not dangerous. It's nothing like that. It's just as if everyone learned to drive by an 8-year-old who was playing a video game. Like, lanes are a suggestion and no one follows them. And people use their hazards for everything. They could be stopping in the middle of the road or pulling over or taking a turn. But the hazards just mean I'm doing something instead of it's an emergency or get out, I'm in the way, they just mean, and so you have to guess what it means they're going to do. It frustrates me. Again, if that's the biggest frustration, I think I'll learn to live with
For
it.
sure. Do you have another one?
Um, Yeah, I would say this one is a big one. I would say how difficult it is to get things here. And I don't mean buy things within the country, but I mean, if you want to have something shipped to you, if you want to buy something online, of course, there are ways around it. We have things here that we can use, like Mercado Libre, etc. But um, you have a weight limit, you have an annual dollar amount limit. There are many things you're not allowed to bring in. So that is a huge frustration to me, especially someone who's lived abroad for a long time. That you've got things from different places in the world that you've gotten to where you really like to have. It's just really challenging to get them in now. I think that's
Right.
my biggest, probably. That's my real beef.
Got it, got it. And I think we'll write an article about that, because you're not the first person to say that. I mean, I often, when we talk to people that have moved here and we've interviewed our readers, like I would say 3 out of 4 say that one of their reasons for moving to Uruguay is that they want to simplify their lives. And so, that's also part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I guess if you want to simplify your life, it's better country than if you want to maintain the kind of
Yes.
access to
Yeah,
the market. As we're saying, like it's a small country, right? So there's a limit to the amount of things that arrive here. And when they do arrive here, they're often expensive because of the duties that are slapped on them.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. And so, um, you speak Spanish, I assume, because you lived in Costa Rica.
I do. My Spanish is not fabulous, but I do speak Spanish. Yeah.
Okay. So, just one. So, and you lived a bit in Latin America. I mean, Uruguay is very different from a lot of the rest of Latin America, which is why it's such an outlier. Um, but I imagine that you had some idea of what it was going to be like. And so I was wondering, is there something that you like about Uruguay that totally took you by surprise?
Yes. How beautiful. Now, I was coming expecting the beauty of the beaches because I'd seen pictures. It's very well, I think, advertised if you research it. Um, the beauty of the countryside is breathtaking. And I think if you stay only in Montevideo or only go to the beaches, you're missing a lot. I haven't been up to the north like you were telling me about yet. I
Yeah.
will definitely, but I think the countryside is really lovely. And even the beaches up, I guess that's super far east or north, like Rocha, those beaches, like if you go far, are stunning. They're just amazing. But I think the beauty of the countryside is amazing. Um, a few other things that surprised me in a really pleasant way is it is very, I don't know how, it's it's like Uruguay is more closely aligned with European countries than it is with the US. And that has been a real, and I mean in like both in architecture and in mindset to some degree. And that's been a really pleasant surprise for me. And I know I'm from the United States, but I live outside of the United States, for many reasons. And that's been a great surprise because it's just really interesting that, and so then it leads you, of course, like, oh, I want to know about the history of this country and how did this come to be? So I've found it really fascinating. Um, Trying to think of something else that's really surprising. The olive oil here is amazing.
I love that.
Before I left, I brought olive oil with me from Italy because I don't know why, because I had some and so I brought it. And I was like, oh, I was like, oh, I'm going to miss this good olive oil, after as it was dwindling. And then I went and I bought some and it's incredible. So that's been a really nice surprise.
Yeah, my understanding is it's up there in the 10 best countries for production of quality olive oil.
It earns it. It's amazing.
Fantastic. Well, so I don't want to take any more of your Sunday. You've been so kind to
My
volunteer to be interviewed. So I've just got a little rapid fire round now. And so I want kind of like free association from you.
okay.
Okay, so um, tell me, life in Uruguay is.
Life in Uruguay is tranquila, simple, easy, pleasant.
Everybody uses that word. It's amazing. It's amazing. Tranquilo, tranquila. All right. The cost of living.
The cost of living is slightly higher than expected, but not unmanageable.
Uruguay wine.
Mm. Uruguay wine is Tanat. It's a bit bold for my taste.
Okay. I've got to say to you that I'm going to send you one of my books, as I said to you. And there you're gonna learn that there are tanats for everyone.
Okay, I would
There are
love
like
to
even
do the wine.
tanats for an aperitif, for example. All
Thank you.
right, okay. And then, as a vegetarian,
Hmm. There's always pasta. Um, There's absolutely no problem if you going out to dinner. You can always, or there's always something to order. It is usually pasta, but there is always, or salad. They do really good salads here. So there's always something. I've never had problems finding something to order out to dinner, and the grocery stores are perfectly stocked for vegetarians. There's plenty.
Amazing. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Before I moved here, I wish I'd known.
Mm. Before I moved here, I wish I had known how different the accent is, the Spanish accent.
Did that
It's,
cause you problems?
yes, it took me about a year to adjust to the Spanish. It's not only is the language different, much like, say, British and US English, the accent, which the words are fine, I can learn new vocabulary, but the accent is very, very strong and very different than the accent I knew. So it took me a long time to adjust just for my ear to learn the difference.
Amazing. That's really helpful. The biggest difference in my life before and my life now.
Hmm. My life before, I lived in a city with no car and public transport everywhere. Now I live in a city, but I live in the suburbs. I have a car. I have a lot more space and um, I'd say a lot more time at the beach.
Wow, that sounds pretty good. Oh, well, Keitsa, thank you so much. It's been really great to talk.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
And I'm so glad that you used Uruguay before you came.
It was very, very helpful.
Tell me a bit more.
Well, it's always hard to try to really find out about a country when you're moving, which I've done, I've been to several countries now, and you'll look up things like the cost of living, and of course there are websites dedicated to that, but they don't really break it down to what it might mean to a person on a day-to-day basis. That you also gave lots of little helpful tips, things like, and this is one, in the winter, you're going to feel really warm if you're in the sun. So you need to dress in layers because, and in the shade, you're freezing, or in my case, inside of my house, it's freezing, but as soon as you open the door, it's lovely. So it's just, little tips. It was a really helpful guide. It helped make my decision on where to go.
Oh, wow. You're not the first person to have told me that.
So thank you. It's wonderful.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear that. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.